final evening here in Houston. We're in Yuddhakanda or Yuddhakanda. The battle is getting ready. Ram received news from Hanuman Sita's been found. Ravana takes stock of the situation. What's next? He decides to prepare for war. Vibhishana makes his best effort. Ravana insults him. Vibhishana leaves. And that's where we ended up. Now, I didn't get a report. I asked somebody to check, and I didn't get the report back yet. I don't recall. I would be very surprised if there's something in Valmiki Ramayana that says Ravana considered, because there was some discussion about it yesterday evening, even if I am killed by Ram, if he's Vishnu, then I'll go to a good place. I don't think that's in Valmiki Ramayana. Does anyone here recall? No. So it's Krishna Dharma's poetic license, I guess. But we had some discussion on that. Ram confronts the ocean, chapter 3. Vibhishana had decided to join Ram. He crossed the ocean and arrived at Ram's camp in less than an hour. It took Hanuman an hour, and at least according to this, and 800 miles an hour. Think of something that's moving at 800 miles an hour. That's fast. How fast do planes move? 500 miles an hour? Anyway, the intelligent Rakshasa stayed in the air and asked to see the leader of the monkeys. Sugriva quickly appeared. Seeing the 5 huge Rakshasas in the sky, wearing armor and adorned with celestial jewels, he was apprehensive. He thought carefully. Had the Rakshasas come to attack the monkeys? Perhaps this was some kind of cunning trick of which Rakshasas were so fond. Sugriva looked closely at Vibhishana. The Rakshasa looked like a mountain or a cloud and vied with Indra in splendor. All 5 Rakshasas were holding various weapons. Sugriva spoke to Hanuman. Surely these Rakshasas have some malicious intention at heart. Let us take up rocks and trees. Leaping into the air, we shall quickly finish them before they can execute their plan. As Sugriva spoke, Vibhishana addressed him from the sky. There is an evil Rakshasa by the name of Ravana. I am his brother Vibhishana. He has carried away Ram's consort by using trickery and deceit. Although I repeatedly advised him to return the princess, the demon would not listen. I have thus come here to seek Ram's shelter. Vibhishana asked the monkeys to inform Ram of his presence. Sugriva was still highly suspicious. He ran up to Ram and said, "One of the enemy has suddenly made his appearance here. No doubt he seeks an opportunity to kill us when we are unaware. Perhaps he is a spy. There may be other invisible Rakshasas around. No trust should ever be reposed in these demons. Please tell us how we should deal with this one." Sugriva told Ram Vibhishan's name and who he was, as well as what he said. The Monkey King was sure that Vibhishan had evil intentions and had been sent there by Ravana himself. He suggested that the Rakshasa and his followers be killed immediately. Sugriva is very wary, very nervous fellow from years of being harassed by Bali. Ram listened carefully. He looked around at the other monkey chiefs who were with him. You have heard Sugriva's suggestion. What do the rest of you think? Each of them gave their opinion. They all felt that Vibhishan was to be treated with the utmost caution and suspicion, that he should be interrogated and tested before they placed any trust in him. Ram then turned to, there's like a long section, like pages of different people said different things. Ram then turned to Hanuman and asked his opinion. The monkey had studied all the scriptures, and bowing to Ram, he replied, although you were well able to ascertain for yourself this Rakshasa's intentions, you nevertheless seek our opinion out of humility and kindness. I shall therefore speak my feelings in this regard. In my view, we should accept Vibhishan as our own. I do not think he has any devious purpose. Hanuman said that he had not detected any deceit in the speech or expression of Vibhishan. If a person has ill motives, then it is always revealed in their expression. Hanuman felt that Vibhishan had wisely decided that Ram's cause was superior to Ravana's. It appeared that the Rakshasa was moral and desired to assist Ram. Having given his opinion, which differed from that of his companions, Hanuman asked Ram for his view. Ram thanked all of them for their suggestions and then said, I cannot refuse to receive a person who has sought my shelter. Whatever his intentions, I must accept as supplicant. This is never condemned in the eyes of good people. Sugriva was alarmed by Ram's statement. He was still convinced that Vibhishan was inimical. The Monkey King tried again to convince Ram. What does it matter whether his intentions are good or bad? Sugriva argued. After all, he's a Rakshasa and will always revert to his own nature. Furthermore, if he can abandon even his own brother, then how can we ever trust him as our friend? Sugriva wanted Vibhishan to be taken captive and perhaps even killed. The Rakshasa was Ravana's brother. His allegiance to Ram would never exceed his deeper attachment to his own people. Sugriva looked anxiously at Ram, who smiled and replied gently, Your concerns are well-founded, O Lord Ravana, but I've given it careful thought. Even if this demon is malevolent, what harm can he do? I can annihilate the entire horde of Rakshasas with my fingertip. We should not have any fear, and we should always abide by the instructions of the Vedas. Ram explained that even an enemy must be received with hospitality according to scriptural rules. If a person comes seeking shelter, then one must offer him protection, even at the cost of one's own life. No consideration should be made of his intentions, good or bad. If a supplicant is turned away and perishes as a result, then he takes all the pious merit of the man who turned him away. Great sin is incurred by such neglect. Ram concluded, If a person comes to me saying, I am yours only once, I shall give him courage and protection from all danger forever after. This is my solemn vow made here before you all. Even if Ravana himself came to me, I would not refuse him shelter. Bring Vibhishan here, for I have already granted him safety. Very celebrated section. Everyone present was moved deeply by Ram's speech. With tears flowing from his eyes, Sugriva said, It is no wonder that you speak in this way, O Ram. You are the best knower of what is right and are always devoted to virtue. My doubts are gone. Let Vibhishan enjoy our friendship on an equal level with all of us. Sugriva gave Vibhishan Ram's message. Feeling reassured, the Rakshasa descended to the earth along with his devoted followers. He went before Ram and lay flat on the ground with his bejeweled hands touching Ram's feet. Getting up onto his knees, he addressed Ram respectfully. I am Vibhishan, the younger half-brother of Ravana. Insulted by him, I have come here, abandoning my family, friends, and home. O Ram, you are the only shelter of all beings. My very life now depends upon you. I don't know why it says my half-brother, because they have the same father and same mother. So don't ask me why it says it. Ram glanced affectionately at Vibhishan. He spoke soothingly to the Rakshasa, welcoming him. Ram then asked him about Ravana's strengths and weaknesses. Please tell me in truth all that you know about Ravana and Lanka. Vibhishan told Ram about Ravana's boon. He described the power of Ravana's chief warriors, Kumbhakarna, Indrajit, Prahasta, Mahodara, and others. All of them were capable of facing the mightiest fighters, even among the gods. Accompanied by them, Ravana had given battle to the four guardians of the universe, all of whom he routed. Four guardians of the universe means, again, this is the cosmology thing, or inference. In the universe, in Bhumandala, there's guardians of the four directions. Kubera is one, Varuna is another, Yamaraj is another, and I forget who the fourth one is, but he confronted them all. Ram replied to Vibhishan, I have indeed heard all these exploits of Ravana, which you have truthfully related. Hear me now. After killing in battle the 10-headed Ravana, along with all his followers, I shall crown you king of Lanka. There need be no doubt whatsoever. I swear by my 3 brothers that I shall not return to Ayodhya without slaying Ravana with his sons, kinfolk, and people. Vibhishan again bowed to Ram and promised to render him every assistance in the upcoming battle. Ram ordered Lakshman to go at once and fetch some seawater. With that water, Ram immediately consecrated Vibhishan as the ruler of Lanka. Pretty cool. Sprinkle some water, he's ruler of Lanka. Witnessing this display of grace, all the monkeys leaped about joyfully, roaring and shouting while Vibhishan sat with his head bowed. Hanuman then approached Vibhishan and asked him how the army could possibly cross the ocean. After thinking for some while, Vibhishan suggested that Ram personally asked the ocean god to reveal some means of crossing. The ocean had been excavated by a great king in Ram's line. What was that king? It was the sons of Sagara. And thus the deity would no doubt wish to render him some service in return. Ram was pleased with Vibhishan's advice, and he spread a seat of kusha grass on the seashore. He sat there and began to pray to the god to reveal himself. As Ram sat on the beach, Ravana's spy flew over the Vanara army. He determined its size and power and returned with all speed to Ravana. Falling before the demon king, the spy submitted. Like another sea, a deep and immeasurable flood of monkeys and bears is moving toward Lanka. They are spread out for 100 miles in all directions. At their head are 2 powerful princes, Ram and Lakshman. Even now they are camped on the seashore, determining some means to cross over it. Ravana became perturbed. He ordered a demon named Sukha, or Shuka, says Sukha, to carry a message to Sugriva. Tell the monkey he has nothing to gain by assaulting Lanka, he ordered. I have never done him any harm. What does it matter to him if I have carried off Sita? Ravana told Sukha to warn Sugriva off. It would not be possible for monkeys and bears to defeat the Rakshasas. Not even the gods could overpower Lanka. What then could a few mere mortal creatures do? They had best return peacefully to their own country. The powerful Sukha turned himself into a large bird and flew swiftly across the sea. He swooped over the monkey army and found Sugriva. From the air, the Rakshasa delivered Ravana's message, but even as he was speaking, the monkeys suddenly sprang up and dragged him down. They began to beat him violently. Sukha cried out to Ram for mercy. Only an envoy who has spoken his own view rather than his master's message deserves death. O Ram, I have faithfully related Ravana's message and should therefore not be slain. Ram ordered the monkeys to let Sukha go. The demon again rose into the air and asked for Sugriva's reply to Ravana. The monkey king said to the demon, Ravana should be informed that I am neither his friend nor his well-wisher. Indeed, he has formed an enmity with Ram, and thus my sworn enemy as well. For stealing Sita from Ram, the demon deserves death at my hands, and that he shall receive in due course. Sugriva sent a message that Ravana would not escape even if he sought shelter in the furthermost part of the universe. He would certainly be killed, along with his entire demon force. The Rakshasa was no match for Ram and his army. Ravana obviously lacked prowess because he stole Sita when Ram was absent. Now he faced a terrible calamity in the shape of Sugriva and his army. After Sukha had left, Ram sat with a concentrated mind at the edge of the sea. He meditated in the sea god Samudra and waited patiently for him to appear. 3 days and nights passed as Ram sat motionless on the beach. But still the ocean deity did not come. Ram became enraged, and he spoke to Lakshmana. Just see the vanity of this god. Although I have sat here humbly beseeching his audience, he has not appeared. Alas, forbearance, gentleness, and politeness of speech are construed as weakness by the wicked. The world regards with respect only those who are arrogant, harsh, and given to meting out strong punishments. O Lakshmana, neither fame nor victory, nor even popularity can be won by conciliation. I shall therefore stand with my bow and flaming arrows. I shall dry up the ocean this very day. The monkeys may go on foot to Lanka. Watch now as I exhibit my prowess. Ram was furious with Samudra. Feeling insulted, he stood firmly on the beach, forcibly stringing his great bow. His eyes were red, and he blazed like the fire of the universal destruction. He instantaneously released hundreds of fleet arrows toward the sea. The ocean began to roar and rise up in massive billows. Clouds of steam covered its surface as the flaming arrows entered the water. Long, writhing sea serpents and great dark whales were thrown about. Waves resembling the Mundra mountain were seen to rise up one after another. Even far beneath the ocean, the Danavas and Nagas felt disturbed and cried out in distress. Lakshman rushed toward Ram and held onto his bow. There's no need for this display, dear brother, he exclaimed. Men of your caliber never give way to anger. Your purpose will surely be achieved without such violence. In the sky, invisible rishis called out, "O Ram, hold, be at peace." But Ram's anger did not abate. He placed upon his bow a large golden arrow and began thinking of the mantras to invoke the Brahmastra. Stretching his bow with vehemence, he gazed furiously at the raging sea. Suddenly, the heavens were enveloped by darkness, and fierce winds blew. Large bolts of lightning were seen, and the earth itself shook. The ocean surged back a distance of 10 miles and rose up to a tremendous height. Ram stood immovable with his arrow trained on the waters. Then, suddenly, before everyone's sight, Samudra appeared. Rising up from the ocean, he seemed like the bright sun at dawn. He shone like a black, glossy gem and was adorned with brilliant gold ornaments, clad in red robes with a garland of red flowers. He had eyes like large lotuses. A wreath of celestial flowers crowned his head. On his chest was a prominent jewel which shed a white luster all around. Surrounded by many river goddesses, he came before Ram and placed before him a large heap of shining jewels taken from the ocean depths. He spoke in a sonorous voice. Every element has its natural state, O Ram. My nature is to be fathomless and unformidable. Spelled wrong. I did not wish to deviate from my constitutional position, neither from infatuation nor from fear. Nevertheless, I shall tell you the means by which I may be crossed by your army. The monkey named Nala is the son of Vishvakarma, the heavenly architect. He can construct a bridge over me, which I will sustain. Samudra assured Ram that he would be able to cross without fear. The deity would ensure that the fierce creatures inhabiting his depths would not be aggressive. Ram still stood with his arrow at the ready on his bow. However, he was now pleased with the sea god and said, "This unfailing shaft must be released. Tell me, O abode of Varuna, where I should send this arrow." Samudra asked Ram to fire the arrow upon a part of his waters to the north. There were numerous sinful demons inhabiting that region, and Samudra did not like his waters being polluted by this touch. Ram assented and shot his fiery arrow to the north, drying up the whole section of the ocean. Samudra then disappeared from view. Now, where was that? Is that in Valmiki Ramayana? Nala was enlivened by the task that faced him. He informed Ram that he had been granted a boon by Vishwakarma, the god's engineer, who decreed that Nala's abilities would equal his own. Nala was confident that he could build the bridge. He ordered the monkeys to fetch the necessary materials. The monkeys leaped about, joyfully applying themselves to the work with great energy. Soon there were thousands of trees and massive heaps of rocks piled on the beach. Nala had them thrown into the sea, and they sent up huge splashes of water using lengths of creepers to measure and make straight lines. Nala gradually constructed its bridge over the sea. The ocean allowed even great rocks to float on his waters. Binding together tree trunks, rocks, and reeds, the monkeys built the bridge toward Lanka. On the first day, they covered 100 miles. Becoming even more enthusiastic, they built 150 miles on the second day and nearly 200 miles on the third. In this way, the bridge was completed in only 5 days and reached right across the ocean to the shores of Lanka. On the southern shore of Lanka stood Vibhishana and his ministers. Southern shore. Why not the northern shore? maces in hand, ready to repulse any Rakshasa who tried to attack the bridge. The gods and Gandharvas, along with the celestial rishis, all stood in amazement as they gazed upon the bridge. It was 80 miles wide and 800 miles long. The monkeys and bears swarmed onto it, shouting and roaring like joy. Like a great flood, they swept toward Lanka. In their forefront were Ram and Lakshman mounted on the backs of Hanuman and Angada. They soon reached Lanka and ordered the army to encamp on the shore. Ram sat with Lakshmana and Sugriva. Now, what was the dimension of the army? How many miles in different directions? 100 miles. So that same number, same space, and they're in Lanka, 100 miles on the shore. Phew. Ram sat with Lakshman and Sugriva. He told the Monkey King to have his troops ready for battle at any time. He spoke of evil portents he had witnessed. Wind full of dust are blowing. The earth is quaking and trees are falling. Dark clouds are thundering and giving force drops of blood. Going to be a storm outside, but I'm sure it's not going to be like that. On all sides, there were ferocious beasts uttering fierce screams as they face the sun. Ram described many omens and said they foretold the destruction of both armies. Eminent heroes among the Vanaras, bears and Rakshasas will soon be killed, Ram said gravely. Sugriva had the army arrayed in battle formation. They spread out and surrounded the city of the Rakshasas from the eastern to the western side. As they approached Lanka, they heard a deafening clamor of war drums from within. The monkeys rejoiced at hearing that hair-raising sound, and they roared loudly, drowning out the drums. Hearing the terrifying roars, the demons clasped their weapons more tightly. Ram looked upon Lanka and felt a pang of separation from Sita. Here she was at last. The vile Ravana also lay within this city, tormenting the anguished princess. Ram was anxious to face the demon. He spoke to Lakshman. Here is the splendid city of Lanka, built long ago by Vishwakarma. It looks like the sky filled with white clouds. Ram had the army deployed in a human-shaped formation with its arms reaching around the city. The most powerful monkeys were stationed at the various key points. Ram himself, along with his brother, stood at the head of the formation. The monkeys took up gigantic trees and rocks, saying to one another, "Let us dash this city to pieces." Chapter 4. Ravana's evil trickery. You know this one, right? Ram's head and his bow. In Lanka, Ravana received report from his spies that the monkeys were amassed outside the city. The terrified Sukha told him that Ram's army was inestimable in size and power. He recommended that Ravana immediately return Sita to Ram. Sukha's suggestion infuriated Ravana. I would not give back Sita, even if the entire host of gods now stood outside Lanka, he bellowed. Oh, when shall my arrows dart towards Ram like bees towards the flowers in spring? I shall eclipse his army even as the rising sun obscures the stars. Ravana bragged of his power at length. He had no intention of making peace with Ram. The demon arrogantly asserted that his power was without compare. It would be a one-sided fight. The demon king was nevertheless impressed by the fact that the army had crossed the ocean by building a great bridge. He needed to more carefully assess their power, and he ordered Shuka and another Rakshasa, Sarana, to enter the enemy ranks. Disguise yourself well and ascertain the exact size of this army. Find out who are the generals and who are Ram's counselors. Tell me who they are. Tell me who is their commander-in-chief. I thought that happened before they crossed. Anyway, I'm too attached to Valmiki Ramayana, I guess. Sukha and Sara disguised themselves as monkeys and penetrated deep into Ram's army, but they could not find the end of his troops. The monkey forces occupied woods, mountains, rivers, and flatlands as far as could be seen. It stretched back across the bridge, all the way to the opposite shore. Still moving toward Lanka, the sound of Ram's army was tumultuous, and it struck fear in the hearts of the Rakshasas. As the two spies wandered amid Ram's soldiers, Vibhishana detected them. He had them captured and brought before Ram. The monkeys kicked and pummeled them as they were dragged towards Ram, and the Rakshasas were terrified and afraid for their lives. They joined their palms and implored Ram, "Dear sir, we are two spies sent by Ravana to find out everything about your army. Please spare us." Ram laughed heartily and replied, "You need have no fear for your lives, O night rangers. If you have seen the entire army, then return to Ravana at once. If not, then I shall have Vibhishana show you whatever you wish to see. Then you may deliver the following message to your king." Ram wanted Ravana to be fully informed of the immensity of the forces that now surrounded his city. Perhaps the foolish demon would see sense. Ram asked the spies to tell Ravana to display all his strength. The next day he would see his city with all its defensive walls and arches broken down by Ram's arrows. At daybreak, Ram said he would let loose his terrible anger on the Rakshasas. The two spies were released, and they sped back into the city. They went trembling before Ravana and spoke, "It seems to us that Ram and Lakshmana alone could uproot Lanka with its walls, palaces, and the entire host of Rakshasas. The glory and power of these two brothers is limitless. They are united with an army of Vanaras who appears frightful and who are bellowing joyfully at the prospect of war. O Lord, abandon your policy of antagonism while there is still time. Return Sita to Ram." Like he's not heard that one before. Ravana roared angrily. Again, his weak-hearted followers were suggesting something to which he would never agree. Again, he said that Lanka was impenetrable, even by the denizens of heaven, never mind a few monkeys. The spies were obviously afraid because they had been beaten by the monkeys, but Ravana would never give way to fear under any circumstances. Followed by Shuka and Sarana, he went up to the top of his palace, wanting to see for himself the monkey army. Standing on top his snow-white palace, which was as high as dozens of tall palm trees, Ravana gazed about. Near the walls of the city, he saw an ocean of dark-colored monkeys and bears. He focused his gaze upon the head of the army and asked Sarana the names of the chief monkeys. Sarana replied, "That colossal monkey who stands facing Lanka and roaring like a furious bull is Sugriva, their king. The one by his side who looks and thunders like a dark storm cloud is Nila, his commander. Near him, the massive monkey who is pacing about and repeatedly yawning in fury is Angada, the crown prince. And there is Hanuman, who single-handedly laid waste your Lanka. You've already met him." Sarna went on to describe all the powerful monkey generals, pointing them out one by one. The awestruck Rakshasa praised the power of Ram's army, which he felt was unassailable. Ravana looked carefully at the foremost monkeys. They were all standing firm with their faces toward the city, brandishing thick trees and rocks, resembling mountain peaks. They shouted and roared, eager for the battle to commence. Behind them stretched the vast army, covering every visible part of the island of Lanka. Ravana saw Ram and Lakshman shining together like the sun and the moon. Near them Vibhishana stood, holding his mace and surrounded by his 4 ministers. The demon king, agitated in heart and indignant, spoke harshly and angrily at his 2 spies, who stood with their heads bent low. How have you dared to glorify in my presence the enemy forces? No wisdom or good sense exist in either of you. Indeed, the load of ignorance is borne by you both alone. By sheer good luck, I have been able to retain the sovereignty of Lanka with stupid ministers like yourselves. I should have you both put to death at once. My anger is hardly abated, even when I think of all your past services. Get out of here. I do not want to see your faces again. Ravana ordered that some other spies be quickly brought. He told them to go among Ram's army and try to ascertain their exact battle plan. They should discover everything about Ram: when he slept, when he ate, what were his habits. Equipped with this knowledge, Ravana felt confident he could repulse his enemy. The spies, headed by a demon named Sardula, quickly left in obedience with Ravana's command. Reaching the top of Suvala mountain, they, headed by Sardula, but there's a few others apparently, they gazed around at the army of monkeys. The Rakshasas were beside themselves with fear as they scanned Ram's vast forces. As they moved toward the army, they were again discovered by Vibhishana, who was constantly on the lookout for Ravana's emissaries. The monkeys beat the demons severely and dragged them before Ram, but the compassionate prince again ordered their release. The spies returned hastily to Lanka, panting and stupefied with terror. They fell before Ravana. The demon king said to Sardula, "You appear somewhat off color, O mighty Rakshasa. I trust you did not fall into the hands of enraged enemies." Sardula replied in a faint voice, "O Lord, it is simply not possible to spy upon this army. They are guarded on all sides by monkeys like mountains and are headed by the invincible Ram. There is no possibility of even asking them a single question. I had hardly penetrated the army before I was arrested and brought before Ram. The monkeys paraded me about, having me march back and forth in various unusual gaits. They attacked me with knees, fists, palms, and teeth, throwing me before Ram in a wretched state." Sardula described to Ravana the enormous bridge over the sea and how it was filled with monkeys and bears, still pouring into Lanka. Like the other spies before him, the Rakshasa recommended, guess what? Ravana hand back Sita. But the demon king remained resolute. He would not give up Sita, even if threatened by all the worlds joined together. Four pages. 3.5. Ravana dismissed the spies and went into his rooms thinking of Sita. Perhaps there was now an opportunity to win her over. If he could somehow convince her that Ram was dead, she might succumb. It was worth a try. And in any event, perhaps, just perhaps, he may end up losing her to Ram. Now might be his last chance to gain her favor. The demon decided to play a trick upon Sita. He summoned a Rakshasa named Vidyujiva, an expert magician, and ordered him to create a head that looked exactly like Ram's head and a bow that resembled Ram's own, saying, "So be it." Vidyujiva soon produced the head and the bow and showed them to Ravana. The demon king was pleased, and he handed the magician a priceless necklace of gems. Ravana then told Vidyujiva to accompany him to the Ashok grove to see Sita. He found Sita laying beneath a tree, sighing repeatedly, still guarded by numerous Rakshasis. With Vidyujiva close behind him, Ravana went before her and began to speak. "Your husband, on whose account you have rebuked me, now lies killed. O blessed lady, your roots are torn out and your vanity is crushed. Of what use to you now is your dead spouse? Become mine today. I shall be a better protector to you than any other. Let me tell you how Ram and his army were slain." Ravana fabricated a whole story about how the army of monkeys was annihilated by the Rakshasas. He told Sita that they had been wiped out during the night as they slept, exhausted from their journey across the sea. All the principal monkeys, including Hanuman, were now dead. Ram's head had been severed by the commander of the Rakshasas. Ravana had Vidyujiva show her the trick head. The magician placed the head on the ground in front of Sita. He handed the bow he had created to Ravana and then promptly vanished from the spot. Throwing down the bow next to the head, Ravana said, "Look upon your husband. There is his famed bow, fetched here by Prahasta after he disposed of that mortal being during the night." Sita looked at the head. It resembled Ram closely, with the same large eyes and the same splendid jewel in his hair. The princess burst into a wail and fell on the ground. She cried out, censuring Kaikeyi, "O cruel woman, be now satisfied with your work. See what you have done to the noble house of Raghu. How can I continue to live? Everything is finished. The death of a husband before his wife is declared to be a catastrophe." She lamented at length, "How had this happened? The royal astrologers had predicted that Ram would live a long life and rule over the earth." "The time spirit is irresistible to all beings," cried Sita. "O Ram, surely you are now reunited with your father. But what of me? Do you not recall the solemn vow you made at our wedding? You declared you would always protect me and take me to the next world with you. How have you deserted me now?" The princess was torn apart. She thought of Kaushalya and Sumitra. They would both die immediately upon hearing the terrible news. Considering that she was the cause of Ram's death, Sita condemned herself. She said to Ravana, "Kill me at once, O demon. Lay my dead body on top of Ram and unite a husband with his wife." While Sita was wailing in this way, a messenger came to Ravana. He called the demon aside and told him that it was needed urgently in the council chamber. Prahasta had arrived and was awaiting orders to commence the battle. Ravana turned away from Sita. There was no time to lose. Ram's formidable forces had to be checked at once. The demon immediately left the Ashok grove and walked swiftly toward his chambers. As soon as he left, a Rakshasi named Sarama, the wife of Vibhishana, came towards Sita. Taking her away from the other Rakshasi guards, she reassured the distraught princess. "I heard what Ravana said to you, but you should not believe him. He is a great trickster and a liar. O great princess, be fully restored to confidence. Ram is not dead. Even now, the demon king is making plans to defend the city from the monkey forces headed by your inconquerable, should be unconquerable, husband and his brother. Sarma spoke with affection to Sita. The Rakshasi was as pious as her husband, and she had often comforted the grieving princess. She assured Sita that Ram's so-called head was an illusion conjured by Ravana and his henchman. As Sarama and Sita spoke, they heard the crash of war drums, as well as the clamor of troops and the blare of countless trumpets. It was obvious that a battle was about to commence. Sarama heard from her husband all about Ram. She said to Sita, "This mighty fight will result in the complete destruction of the demons. Ravana will undoubtedly be slain by Ram. No other outcome is possible. Dear Sita, I am certain you will be reunited with your husband." After gladdening Sita, Sarama asked if there was any service she could do for the princess. She offered to carry a message to Ram. "If you wish, I can invisibly go through the skies and reassure Ram of your safety," she suggested. But Sita instead asked to be informed of Ravana's plans. She wanted to know if Ravana had any intention of releasing her or of even killing her before Ram came. If so, then perhaps a message should be taken to Ram. Very clever. Sarama went unobserved in Ravana's chambers and listened to the discussions. After some hours, she returned again to Sita and informed her what was happening. "Ravana has been exhorted by his own dear mother to return you to Ram," Sarama said, "along with one of his elderly and affectionate counselors. She tried at length to make him see sense. Other wise ministers have also put forward a case for your return. They warned Ravana that battle with Ram and the monkeys will have a disastrous result for the Rakshasas. But Ravana will no more let you go than a miser would leave hold on treasure. He is not prepared to release you until he has laid down his life in combat, O godly one." Sita thanked Sarama for her kindness and friendship. Feeling reassured that her husband would soon arrive and rescue her, she sat beneath the Simshapa tree, absorbing herself in thoughts of Ram. One page. In his council chamber, Ravana gazed around at his ministers. They all sat mutely, looking at one another. Ram's feat in crossing the ocean with an unlimited number of bears and monkeys was astonishing. And that was on top of the incredible display by a single monkey in Lanka. Surely battle with Ram would be foolhardy. Seeing the timidity of his advisors, Ravana spoke in a voice which rang around the silent chamber. "I have heard everything about Ram and his prowess. I feel that we will be able to overcome him in battle. I know the Rakshasas will be unfailing and resolute. You should entertain no fears." An elderly counselor named Malyavan, Ravana's maternal grandfather, replied, "O king, there are different ways to deal with a hostile enemy. Battle is only one, and is only recommended in situations where the enemy is clearly weaker or where every other means of diplomacy has failed. You have not explored any other avenues with Ram. Let us first try to make an alliance. Give Sita back to Ram. The outcome of battle is always unsure. There must be a loser. On the one hand, O intelligent Rakshasa, negotiation can produce a favorable result for both parties." Malyavan spoke strongly. Ravana had abandoned virtue. He would not be swallowed up by evil. Now be swallowed up by evil. Ram, however, was devoted to virtue, and his cause was just. The gods and the rishis, whom Ravana had assaulted, were supporting Ram. Furthermore, Ravana had no immunity to humans, nor animals, nor was Ram an ordinary human. He was surely Vishnu himself. Again, I don't know if that's in Valmiki Ramayana. Therefore, peace should be secured by any means. Having delivered his sagacious advice, Malyavan fell silent, eyeing the ruler of Lanka and awaiting his response. Ravana knitted his brow. He breathed heavily in anger, clenching his fists, all 20 of them. He replied furiously, "How have you uttered such a harsh and ill-considered words? Surely you have come under the sway of the enemy. On what basis do you hold as powerful the wretch Ram, a mere human who has been abandoned by his father and is supportive of only a band of monkeys? See him struck down by me in a short while, having somehow crossed the sea and reached Lanka. He will nevertheless not return with his life. There is no doubt whatsoever." Malyavan made no reply. It seemed that Ravana was bent on his own ruin. After uttering benedictions, wishing him victory, the old minister left for his own residence. Ravana set about making all arrangement for Lanka's defense. He posted powerful generals at each of the city's 4 gates, all of them equipped with a force of hundreds of thousands of fierce Rakshasas. Ravana himself would visit each gate in turn. Satisfied that everything was secure, the demon then retired to his own chambers. The battle is about to begin. Pretty exciting, huh? And it's not fiction. The demons and the suras and the asuras. Really interesting. Bhaktivinoda Thakur didn't receive Srimad Bhagavatam until he was in his mid-30s, something like 34, because there's no printing press. He got a copy from a friend after trying and trying. And upon receiving it, he read it twice. Of course, there are no Bhaktivedanta purports. There was just the Bhagavatam. And within the period of 1 year, he wrote his first essay on the Bhagavatam. And in the Bhagavatam, in that essay, he described, one of the things he described was that any great literature of any culture is simply a rewrite of that which is in Scripture. And so the root of all is the Scripture. And then over time, cultures and language and customs and things, then there's a rewrite. He gave the example of, because his audience was European educated, or educated in European literature at least, scholars. So he Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained, Milton, popular literature. It's just a rewriting of the biblical story, the New Testament, in modern the modern language. And for your information, there's this same thing was done, not completely like this, but same thing was done in China, and same thing is done by a modern movie maker. At least a report that I read is this modern movie maker that made Star Wars read Ramayana, he said, wow, it's a great plot. So he made a plot. A female that was stolen and a monkey and the whole thing. With modern, um, you know, scenes and so forth. And in China, I was really surprised when I learned this. There's the Chinese government made a very lengthy documentary on an historical event of a Chinese Buddhist named Shenzhen who lived during the 600s during the rule of one of the you know um, dynasties, such and such dynasty, and there's the whole history of that there are other because there are lots of warring groups. Some group would rise and get very powerful and then attack another group and so forth. So he was from that area in the northeastern part of China, or the eastern part of China. And he grew up as a Buddhist, and he was confused about, some branch of Buddhism teaches this, and some branch of Buddhism teaches that, and another one, and what's the real deal? He was really inquisitive to want to know. And so he kind of made up his mind that he would go to the place where Buddha appeared and learn there. And it's a long story. He left, crossed overland, nearly lost his life about 6 times, this thing, that thing, and the other thing. Eventually he made it to the place where Buddha, there was a 100-year-old Buddhist monk, because by that time in India, Buddhism was on the decline. It was like the only remaining stronghold, and there was a very elderly, 100-plus-year-old monk. He learned Sanskrit. He was trained in Buddhist teachings in Sanskrit. He became a super scholar. And he was set up by some kings to debate other scholars that weren't Buddhists, and he would always win, and so forth and so on. And he traveled around all of India, kept careful records, and went back overland. Again, nearly lost his life, although he had all the Buddhist books with him. And it ends where he had something like 100 of the original Buddhist texts in Sanskrit translated into Chinese language. And that's how Chinese Buddhism became manifest in a very strong way through him. So that happened in the 600s. Nearly a century later, or several hundred years later, whatever it was, there was a poet who came along, picked up his autobiography kind of diary journal thing that was very, very, very detailed, and he rewrote it in modern language, modern Chinese context, and suddenly Hanuman appeared, because apparently there was some influence in China about attraction for Ramayana. So it was called Journey to the West, whatever that is in Chinese. And it was the story of Shenzhen going, and traveling with him was the Monkey King. It has a Chinese name, and it was very clearly, evidently, a blend to popularize the feature of Ramayana with of all people, Hanuman. And it's I was told by Nandi Mukhi, who's Chinese, that there are 4 books that everybody going to school in China must read, and that's one of them. The Journey West with Monkey King. So everybody in China knows the Monkey King. And shortly they're going to receive in Chinese, not this version, but Bhakti Vikash Maharaj's version of Valmiki Ramayana, distilled down in Chinese, because the Chinese government approved the publishing of that book. Somehow that happened. Yeah, there's an ISBN, and it's been translated, and now it's at the stage of they have to popularize it a little bit. The publisher said it's not marketable, so they have to make it, Ramayana with Chinese characteristics. It's how to present Krishna consciousness. KCCC, Krishna consciousness with Chinese characteristics. They do their Bhakti Shastri that way. They do their everything that way. They do their yoga classes that way. They do they give classes in Bhagavad Gita that way. But it's a very powerful epic. I think it's going to be very popular in China because people already know the Monkey King. And they'll see the connection and they'll go, wow, this is great. And it's great. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. The war is about to begin.
So the Ramayana would it be when the Ramayana that is being published in Chinese, would that be called Ramayana or something
It's
else?
going to be called Ramayana. That's the title.
This is on and it is and Chinese government know that it is a religious book in India.
I don't know what they know. They proved it. That much I know. The Chinese government has a view that something that's culture and traditional is acceptable. I mean, there's limits, there's boundaries, but that's something that they endorse. Authentic and cultural, because they want to promote their own culture, and they're being accommodating to other cultures that's original and traditional, etc. Their whole thought process. Don't ask me because I don't know. I don't know how Super Soul let it slip through or something. I don't know.
Does it have any bearing that they already know about the Monkey King and all
I
that?
don't know. I don't know. You don't ask me those questions. I don't know what their thought process was. I don't know. I don't. I just know they gave an ISBN. They read the document. They read the English, and they proved it. They had to get a letter of authorization from the previous publisher, which was received.
It's very good to know.
Yeah.
Very nice.
It's going to take some time because it's a literal translation isn't going to work. Exactly what that means, I don't know, but the people there do know. Anyway, anything else?
Hey, Krishna Maharaj. Actually, I was wondering how many days Lord Rama took to cross the bridge, actually, because it's 100 miles, or I heard
800.
800 miles. So, because
Well,
big
he was on
army.
the backs of Vanras, so you can't go by your walking or a normal person's walking. How your question is, how long did it take to cross the bridge?
Yes,
No idea.
because I was thinking Hanuman took, because he was flying 800 miles hour, right? So, I was just thinking in
Well, it
that
didn't
way.
take. He didn't walk at 800 miles an hour.
He flew.
Not likely. But we don't know how long.
Okay.
You can keep asking, and the same answer. I don't know.
And Maharaj, where we can find out Valmiki Ramayana?
In what language?
English is fine or Hindi is
English is
fine.
fine. There may be some online, and the person that you can ask, there are three persons you can ask. When it comes to Valmiki Ramayana, there are three persons who I ask. There's probably a lot more. I can think of 5 actually now. But in the United States, Lal Gopal, who is the president in St. Louis, Nityananda Pran, who's in Chicago,
Yeah.
and Shyam who's in Bangalore. And they'll all have an answer. You know, which Valmiki Ramayana in English what might you be able to secure? Now, the difficulty is the translators commonly were the old British, like eating sawdust. It's like really difficult. So where there's a readable English version, I don't know. And more likely to find one in Hindi or something, a good one. You can understand Hindi,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. We
Yeah.
speak
So
Hindi.
you can ask those 3 people. I don't know.
Okay.
I have something I have 2 versions that are not complete in my computer, but they're not complete.
Okay. Because I believe last year you gave the classes on the Ramayana.
I did.
Yeah, Valmiki Ramayana. So
I
I was
did.
following up. So I fell love actually because there was a lot of details. I never heard about the Vibhishana's
Well,
wife actually.
the research was done by Shyam Kund and his team, and the research included versions of Ramayana that are not just Valmiki Ramayana. There's multiple other versions, including commentaries in Tamil that a team of translators translated, and they spent, I don't know, I forget the number, 1,500 hours or something like that, putting all that together. But it's not just Valmiki Ramayana.
And I have one more question, Maharaj. Actually, I was thinking about when you were explaining the Bali Yuddha, like Yuddha between Sugriva and Bali. So Lord Rama was confused because they were very identical, and he was behind the tree bush.
Yeah,
So
whatever.
I was just thinking, he is Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Why is he doing that?
Yeah, why he didn't come out and directly he killed the Bali?
There were benedictions that Vali had and didn't want to violate.
So Lord Rama didn't want to break that benediction. That
Yeah,
is the
he
reason.
upholds the benedictions of Devas. He didn't want to break it. So he did it the way he did it. I mean, there's multiple things. There's multiple things, but that's one of the things. I mean, the very question you asked is a question naturally anyone asks. I ask myself, why is he doing that? He can do it any way he wants to do it. That was one of the reasons.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
I think Guruji, he had a benediction that with whomever he fights, his half strength will go to him. That's the reason probably he didn't want to. That's what I remember actually.
That was one of the benedictions. This chain that he was wearing. So he wanted to honor that. So there wasn't any direct combat. It was done the way that he did it to protect, because he doesn't have to be bound by anything Indra says, but he was protecting what Indra said.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. About the Vanaras and the bears that died in the battle.
He brought them back to life.
Yeah, and I was contrasting that with the Yadu dynasty, who had also appeared to help Krishna, but he arranged for their demise at the end of his Leela, and here he brought them back. Just wondering, it is not an observation, more of a.
Hit different Leela. No? Okay. Online, let's go.
Question from Uttam Bhaktadas.
He's very consistent.
India was a land of very powerful warriors.
Yes, yeah.
How
That
was-
description of those, how they were decked out, the four ministers and Vibhishana, like, whew. Go ahead, colorful.
How was it that foreign warriors, Muslims, etc., came and took control of major parts of India for about 800 years? British rule is one reason. Any other reasons why Ramayana and Mahabharata came to be known as mythology?
As which? Known as?
Mythology,
Oh, British.
which is blatant distortion of the truth.
Well, it's the British. They were good. That's my answer. Next.
The next question is from Hema.
They had influenced the intellectuals. They were good. They understand what they needed to do, and they did it. There's some history. Macaulay was sent by England to reported back to Parliament. You know how to control India. You have to break the backbone, their faith in their religion. They have to go to the intellectuals. So there was this big deal between the Brahmanas and the intellectuals, called Brahmoism. You know, like a movement, and you know the British stirred it, and so the intellectuals they abandoned Vedic, and it took up European literature, and you know exalted it, and so the European literature looked down their nose at anything Vedic. That was just how you win a battle. You poo-poo the other guy, and they were effective. It worked. When the direction intellectuals go, affects the rest of society strongly. Not 100%, but strongly.
Next question from Hema from Bangalore. Is there any difference between Asuras and Rakshas except that they're different lineage? Asuras are sons of Diti. Were Asuras present during Ramayana?
What's the word that you're using? Others?
Asuras.
Asuras. Yeah, they mean different things, and an Asura can be a Rakshasa, but a Rakshasa is not necessarily. Excuse me. Rakshasas are Asuras, but Asuras are not necessarily Rakshasas. Asura, in a very broad sense, means they don't accept Vishnu. Sura means to accept Vishnu, a devotee. And those who don't accept Vishnu, they're Asuras. And there's categories, subcategories, so many. And Rakshasas is one of those.
Next question from Svetadweep Prabhu. In connection to Rama killing Vali, how can we understand that he was confused between Vali and Sugriva when Vali and Sugriva fought for the first time?
I distributed, I read it one of the evenings, and I'll send you the document. You have the document? So you send him the document. So rather than repeat it, you can read the document. Everyone, most of the persons here, I'll say it. I particularly like I particularly like the explanation of one Acharya, Sri Vaishnava Acharya, who commented that in during the battle, the demigods are praising Ram, And Ram says, he speaks a line that says, I am but the son of Dasarath, indicating how he saw himself was as the son of Dasarath, as like human. So there's the divine and there's the human. Sometimes the divine, sometimes the human becomes more pronounced, and sometimes they're both present. This Acharya comments that in this case, the human was he literally didn't recognize the difference, and the divine was he understood there was an offense made, and he wanted to correct the offense made to Lakshmana, and so he did that. The offense to Lakshmana was not providing a sitting place when they first got together. Hanuman did instead. So that was an offense to Lakshman, who wanted it to be corrected. So the correction was made by having a garland of a vine placed over his head, but he had to bow down to Lakshman to receive the garland. So that his divine and human-like natures were simultaneously running, and his inability to recognize. I mean, God's omniscient, so he can't. It's not something he doesn't know. But the human-like nature was he couldn't distinguish between the two. He didn't want to shoot the wrong guy. So that's a nice explanation. But the whole document you can get a copy of.
Another question from Uttam Bhakta Prabhu. Any significance Lord Rama dragged the war for a fairly long time to defeat Ravana and bring back Sita?
Is there a reason it took some time?
Is there any significance?
Is there significance? Drama. I mean, the whole thing is drama or Leela, meaning he could have just, exploded the whole of Lanka. He didn't need a battle. He didn't need anything. It's a Leela, and give the Vanaras a chance to do some service for him and everything.
Question from Gopinath.
Okay.
How far apart were Lord Rama and Lord Krishna's Leelas in terms of time length?
Okay. Gopinath, listen carefully. The writings of Rupa Goswami and of Kurma Purana tell us that Lord Ramachandra appeared in the 24th Yuga cycle of Vaivasvata Manu. Krishna appears during the 28th Yuga cycle of Vaivasvata Manu. That's how much time lapsed between Ram's pastimes and Krishna's pastimes. Yuga cycle, one Yuga cycle is a long time. Anything more? Online? Go.
This is from Shashimukhi Mataji regarding yesterday's class. Ravana being a son of an elevated Brahmana, what made him become a Rakshasa? My understanding in general, we say if we give good values to the kids, they will take the teachings and imbibe in their life. How do we correct this behavior if they go in another direction of life?
That's a loaded question. How it happened was bad association, because his mother, Ravana's mother, was a Rakshasi, and we heard his mother was giving spiritual instruction to Ravana, which he wouldn't listen to. But her father, Kaikashi's father, was the bad association person. So he became corrupted by the bad association person. And parenting question. If you have children, children start going in a bad direction, you don't have control. How can I control? Well, you don't have control. You can give a proper atmosphere for spiritual development, and spirit souls are going to make choices. You make your best effort, and the results are dependent upon Krishna and the interaction of that soul and the choices they're making.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I took my mask down. uh, my question has to do, I guess it kind of branches off my mom's question in a way. It has to do with like the origin stories of demons and of rakshasas, and like this theme that we see in our scriptures where it's light versus dark, or good versus evil, and it's sometimes portrayed very black and white. And I'm comparing it to how in the modern day there's like this movement where there's such a fascination with villains and with
Oh, yeah.
understanding like how they became the way that they are, and it's this like sense of there has to be good. They must have started out good, and then circumstance turned them into the villain that they are. And in our scriptures, from what we've been reading and from whatever understanding that I've been gaining, I'm feeling like there is this sense of like almost like just blatant, this is who a demon is, or this is who a hero is. Is it
You
meant to be
mumbled
like
this
that?
last part. The last part, your
Oh.
understanding is what? Say it's clearer again.
My understanding is that in scriptures it's very blatant.
What?
It's very blatant.
What's
like
blatant?
that a demon is completely demonic or a hero is completely heroic, and
Well,
it seems very...
it's not always like that. It's not always like that completely. There's nice stories about the mix between the bad and the good. But good tendencies, bad tendencies in one person.
But like with the overarching stories, like
Yeah, the themes are that black and white. Yeah. Okay.
are scriptures meant to? Are they purposefully written like that so
No,
that we get...
it's just because the nature is there, divine and demoniac. It's Bhagavad Gita. It's not storybook. It's and there's modes of nature, and you associate with this mode, you go down. You associate with that mode, you go up. And how do you get that association through those that have that mode? And you associate with the rotten apple, you become rotten. Good apples in a barrel with a rotten apple, they become rotten. The modes of by association with the modes, one develops qualities like those modes. So we're advised to choose association wisely. Okay, we're done. More.
Samaraj, you mentioned the Lord Rama appeared in 24th Yuga cycle of Vaivasata Manu, while Lord Krishna appeared in 28th Yuga cycle, which is like basically 4 Yuga cycle apart and 16 Yugas basically.
16.
Yeah, so Yuga cycle means all
All
4 Yuga,
four.
all 4 one time. So 4 multiplied
Yes,
by 4,
Yuga
16.
cycle is 4.
Yeah. So I mean, and the bridge that Lord Rama made over the ocean, that bridge still exists as Adam's bridge, right? No, so is survived those many yugas? Like just a
What else you want to? I'm not an architect of what goes on under the sea.
The-
It's there, so you don't ask it again because it is what it is. It is what it is. Don't ask it again.
because this is new information for me, like 24.
Yeah, it's in Lagu Bhagavatamrita. You get a copy or get it online or borrow it from Radha Krishna, or you have him find you the passage. It's there. It's in Lagu Bhagavatamrita, and it's also in Kurma Purana.
Thank you, Raj.
It's a detail. And, it's important, but it's a detail. I until reading it, my just assumption was in the same yuga cycle. I had no idea there was anything other than the same yuga cycle. But Jiva, we don't doubt Rupa Goswami, and he doesn't write fiction. It's on authority, and that's what he writes.
Thank
Okay.
you, Raj.
I had one question not related to the Ramayana, but because this is the last evening program here, I thought I will ask. This is about description of opulences in the spiritual world,
Opulences.
including Goloka Vrindavan, where there are like jewels, but they are used as door stops, or the residents don't really care for all the opulence. That's my understanding.
Well, the jewels are Chintamani, and everything is Chintamani. And that they use the doorstops, just Chintamani. It's just what everything is made of.
So in the material world, so as long as we are attracted to just the opulence for sake of being opulent, we are not qualified to enter the spiritual world.
That's correct.
But there is so much description of opulence in the spiritual world which the residents there don't care about. I'm just wondering, why is there so much description? Because we are not supposed to be attracted to the opulence.
Oh, because it's what the spiritual world is. I mean, that you can look two lenses. One is people are attracted, and look, this place is more opulent than anything you can even think about. And the other is, that is the place. It's a description of the place. So you don't not describe the place because people are attracted to what was in the place. It's the quality is of a different quality altogether than worldly opulence. What to speak of the attraction is of a different quality. There's something more. Go ahead.
Question from Radha Vallabhdas. I recently heard that similar to the chanting process,
Similar to
the chanting process,
the chanting process,
wherein we are instructed to have clear intentions to please the Lord, even while hearing scriptures, we need to have clear intentions / desires to connect deeper in bhakti. Otherwise, we can get lost in technical detail. Is that true?
yeah, you can get lost in a lot of different forests. That's one of them. Sure, it's one of them. Not the only one. Lots of forests. More? Yes.
Question from Amara Devi Dasi. Transcendental emotions of devotees are in relationship to the Lord and other devotees of the Lord. Similarly, are Lord's transcendental feelings for his devotees?
Why would you ask such a question? He has feelings, and he has feelings for his devotees, and those feelings are transcendental. So maybe she means something else by your question than the obvious, but of course. Okay.
Another question from Amara Devi Dasi. What is the relationship between free will of conditioned souls?
Between which of the conditioned souls?
Free will.
Free will. Free will. Okay.
Of the conditioned souls and the Lord's life. how Leela perfectly takes place even though living entities make its choices.
Well, if you make the choice to please Krishna, then he gives you the intelligence how to please him. Your free will choice is not, we're never independent. If free will doesn't mean absolute independence. You make the free will choice to be pleasing to Krishna, and he gives you the intelligence how to do stuff that's pleasing to Krishna. It's a relationship. Here we go. Got wound up.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So, back to the Ramayana. I just had a quick question about when Ravana, after the war started, and when Ravana saw everyone falling in his army, did he still not? And if he didn't, why didn't he realize that? Oh, okay.
He's a demon. He's like a donkey. Very stubborn. I'm all powerful. I mean, that, he couldn't have a conception other than that. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.